Johnny. Beautiful song. Unclouded Day was in there somewhere, right? Is that song? What's that? River Life? I thought I heard Unclouded. Oh, they tell me. Anyway. Oh, that's perfect. That's good. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Welcome, everyone, to Beacon Hill. Glad you're here this Lord's Day morning. It's good to see everyone back that are able to make it back. And it's good to see Mary here. Mary, you've made it back to us from your travels. Good to see you. And everybody else who's here this Lord's Day morning. Clark is away. He normally gives our little welcome and intro to the Ethos statement, but he's away today. I'm glad that you are here. Each week when we come together, we start our service off by reading our Ethos statement out loud together. And the reason we do it every week is because we like to remind ourselves the kind of culture that we're trying to create here at the Beacon Hill Fellowship. That is one of welcome and inclusion. We not only want to say the words, we want to live that kind of life and that communal life here at Beacon Hill. So the words you're going to see on the screen, I like to give you a little bit of history because I want to give credit where credit is due. Some years ago, I had a conversation with a pastor who from Colorado, from Denver, Colorado, Highlands Church in Denver, Colorado. His name is Mark Tidd. And I'd come across this ethos statement that their church used. And I told him that I really liked that and wondered, is it possible that we could use this in a similar way? He said, yeah, just give me credit if you don't mind. And we do. It's in small print at the bottom, but I try to mention it from time to time so you'll know that it didn't originate with me or with us, but we've incorporated into the life of our community for the last several years. And the reason we want to read it every week is to say to anybody who is here for the first time as a guest, we also have people who tune in by our YouTube channel, and they'll see it and they'll know right up front, this is kind of where we stand as a congregation. And when we say we want to have open doors, we don't want to just have open doors to everybody. We want to have open hearts. And we want to affirm their unique God-given differences and give them the privilege, give us the privilege of getting to know them so that we can share this journey together as we're trying to become more like Christ in our day-to-day lives. And so we'll say these words if you like. You're welcome to join us. They're on the screen behind me. And notice what they say. They cover a lot of different relationships. Not everything, but a lot of them that are important to us. So let's say those words that you'll see on the screen behind me. Married, divorced, or single here, it's one family that mingles here. Conservative or liberal here. We've all got to give a little here. Big or small here, there's room for us all here. Doubt or believe here, we all can receive here. Gay or straight here, there's no hate here. Woman or man here, everyone can here. Whatever your race here, for all of us grace here. In imitation of the remarkable love Almighty God has for each of us and all of us, let us live and love without labels.
May the peace of Christ be with you.
And also
with you. Let us pray. Awesome Creator God, thank you for this new day and the sunshine. Please send us some rain. Thank you for our music. Help us remember all of our service people, those who are gone and those still serving. Be with the families who gave up loved ones. They are the reason we can be here to worship you. Help us to remember to serve you as we go about our days. In Jesus' name, amen.
Life. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you for that singing. This is, of course, in the United States, Memorial Day weekend, and it's never been our custom at the Beacon Hill Fellowship to turn patriotic holidays into an opportunity for American flag waving. We appreciate the country I was born into and I've grown up in. But a local congregation or the church is really not a representation of any nation state. Christians are around the world. The kingdom of God is universal. It's not limited to one nation. We should always risk the temptation to turn Jesus into a good flag-waving American. His concerns are greater than that. His concerns, as well as God's concerns, is the entire human family. So when I come to a holiday like Memorial Day, certainly as an American, I feel some patriotic sentiment. I certainly do, for people who have died in the service to this country. But also remember the fact that Memorial Day ought to be a reminder to us of how horrible war is for everybody. Not just my side wins and their side loses. In war, when you get to that point, of conflict, where you're actually killing one another, everybody's losing. Everybody's going to lose. And some of you perhaps have a particular person, and we like to do that this day of the year, that you remember that's a family member or a friend or someone who you were in service with who died, who was dear to you. We're going to give you an opportunity to name their name out loud if you'd like. And by doing it, we're saying, I hope, reminding ourselves of how costly war is for everybody, so that we might be further reminded that we should try to rise above the spirit of war and champion the spirit of peace and reconciliation everywhere, all the time, with all people, because we believe God cares about all people, not just Americans.
I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. Thank you.
Our Old Testament reading today is from Ecclesiastes, chapter 9, verses 1 through 10. Take life as it comes. All this I laid to heart, examining it all, how the righteous and the wise and their deeds are in the hand of God. Whether it is love or hate, one does not know. Everything that confronts them is vanity, since the same fate comes to all, to the righteous and the wicked, to the good and the evil, to the clean and the unclean, to those who sacrifice and those who do not sacrifice. As are the good, so are the sinners. Those who swear are like those who shun an oath. This is an evil in all that happens under the sun, that the same fate comes to everyone. Moreover, the hearts of humans are full of evil. Madness is in their hearts while they live, and after they go to the dead. But whoever is joined with all the living has hope, for a living dog is better than a dead lion. The living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no more reward, and even the memory of them is lost. Their love and their hate and their envy have already perished. Never again will they have any share in all that happens under the sun. Go, eat your bread with enjoyment, and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has long ago approved what you do. Let your garments always be white. Do not let oil be lacking on your head. Enjoy life with the wife whom you love all the days of your vain life that are given you under the sun, because that is your portion in life and in your toil at which you toil under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do with your might, for there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol, to which you are going. It is written.
Be to God. Thank you, Ashley, for that reading from Ecclesiastes. And if you follow that reading closely, if you know anything about the book of Ecclesiastes, that strange-sounding title just means the preacher or the person who addresses the congregation. And in it, the author is reflecting on life. And it sounds a little morbid. It doesn't sound extremely hopeful, because he recognizes that life under the sun can often feel like vanity, a meaningless life. In the conclusion of that, after basically saying that we're not a whole lot better than the rest of the animal world, we're all going to die, and he says that a living dog is better than a dead lion, which is a turn of phrase I hope he meant a little bit humorous, but at least he was honest. He goes on to conclude how we should live our lives, and he talks about some of the simple things: enjoying our lives, enjoying our work, enjoying our partner in life, and I would include our friends as well. He's looking for a way to find a sense of meaning and a sense of joy and a sense of happiness in this life, and he has very practical advice to do that. Well, that's one way in the Bible that people wrestle with this issue of how to find a sense of well-being, of finding what's important in life. When you come to the scriptures of early Christianity, there's a selection I want to share with you now that will lead into our topic again today, which is about mental wellness. Let's look at the scriptures from Philippians chapter 4. Paul wrote these words to the church at Philippi, and he says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to everyone. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. He goes on from there, which is not on the screen, and says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, later on in that same chapter. So there, Paul is trying to give guidance to the Christians in that church at Philippi. And he's saying to them to entrust your concerns, your deep concerns, into God's care. Learn to live with peace. He says, don't be anxious about anything. The easiest words, by the way, in the world to say, the hardest in the world to actually practice. And we've been talking about that throughout this month, the focus on mental health awareness. And Paul would say to his listeners, his readers, focus on those things that are positive, cultivate a positive life, and entrust God and your concerns and cares into God's hands. Well, we've been talking all month about the importance of mental health awareness. And for the first 3 weeks, we've talked a lot about the impact of mental illness and being aware of mental illness and trying to reduce the stigma of mental illness. And we've also tried to encourage everybody who is here, but also people who watch by video, if you need to talk to someone, if you need a therapist, if you need a group that you need to be a part of, or just a friend that you can go and share with, that you're encouraged to find that person. Perhaps you'll find them here. Perhaps you'll need to find them in some other place. But we wanted to make this month a time where we highlighted the importance of mental health awareness. The final installment is today, and we're happy to have, once again, Dr. Richard Marshall, Dr. Berney Wilkinson to come back again to share with us about mental wellness. And so as they come down, just come on down. I'm going to remind you, for those who may not have been here last week, and maybe you watched them for the first time on video and you missed last week, so you can go back and find it on our YouTube channel from last week, where we talked about, really the focus was on things not going well in people's lives. Today, I think the focus is going to be on the more positive wellness and cultivating those practices. But Dr. Berney Wilkinson is a licensed psychologist who has practiced in Central Florida for over 20 years and specializes in pediatric psychology, neuropsychology, and forensic psychology. Dr. Berney provides a wide array of mental health services to his clients, including individual therapy, family therapy, and parent training, psychological and neuropsychological assessment, forensic evaluations, and group therapy. Dr. Richard Marshall is a licensed school psychologist who has practiced in Central Florida for over 20 years, specializing in pediatric psychology, psychological, educational, and neuropsychological assessment, family therapy, couples therapy, and parent coordination. A little bit about them, how you can kind of follow them beyond what you're going to hear today, is Dr. Berney and Dr. Marshall have conducted workshops and seminars for professional and community groups around the world. They are the co-authors of a parenting book entitled Handbook for Raising an Emotionally Healthy Child. That's available on Amazon. And the Pediatric Behavior Rating Scale. They also co-host a weekly podcast entitled The Mental Breakdown, which can be found on YouTube and on most podcast platforms. So will everybody give a hand to Dr. Berney, Dr. Marshall, as they come forward? To those of you here last week, you know the format was a question and response, and we're going to have that again too, but you've got your mic good. What we're going to do, I think, to start us off with, Berney and I talked about this, Dr. Berney, we discussed kind of concluding this emphasis, and we're not concluding it. I hope that at least on a monthly basis we'll have I'm thinking about calling it as a wellness check, but where we talk in an ongoing way throughout the year about the importance of mental health awareness. But Berney wanted to make sure we ended on a positive note, focusing on mental wellness, and I know that one of your recent podcasts was about that I listened to on this subject. And so I'll let each of you just have a little time to start out. Now, my number is on there. Here's what we did last week. You can stand up and you can ask a question, but I'm also going to give you an opportunity to text me one, because somebody might have a question they might not want to openly identify with, or they might want to just get it to me by text and I'll read it, and we'll share it with our two doctors up here. So we'll start off, I guess you got the mic, Berney. You can go ahead and talk about what you want to talk about in the area of mental wellness.
All right. Well, it's great to be back again and to share this with you guys, and definitely encourage any questions or anything as we go through and talk today. when it comes to mental wellness, one of the reasons we focus on mental wellness is because, we kind of mentioned this a little bit last week, but a lot of times we think about and we hear about this significant increase in mental health conditions. We hear a lot about, a significant increase in mental health conditions and people getting treatment for mental illness and things like that. And we think it's important to focus on mental wellness because the reality is that only about 20% or 1 in 5 people have a mental health condition at any particular time in their life. Well, if 20% have a mental health condition, that means that 80% of us don't. That's just math. It's middle school math or so.
Yeah, got it.
But the important thing with that is that means that most of the time when we're going through something, it's probably not a mental illness. It's probably just life circumstance. And instead of getting into this perspective where, as soon as we start feeling anxious or we start feeling sad about something, we immediately go into this idea that we have a mental illness, that maybe we should look at some other ways and other, mechanisms for dealing with some of these things that we're going through and try to help live healthy, happy lives without, using mental illness as part of our identity or seeing that as part of who we are, because it may not be.
20% probably have some type of mental illness. It has been, in the last few years, we have destigmatized mental illness. There was a time, certainly in my parents' generation, where it was an embarrassment. You never talked about it. If there was a problem, you never discussed it. And that was a problem. Today we do discuss it, but now that pendulum has swung a little bit far, and now everybody is talking about their mental illness. They probably don't have a mental illness. But in keeping with today's scripture, life is hard. Life can be very, very difficult. We stub our toes on life. We scrape our shins on life. And that is probably the bigger challenge, is how do you handle the loss of a loved one? How do you handle disappointment? How do you handle failure? How do you handle illness? Those are not mental health issues. Those are life issues. And that's what we want to talk about today. Life is going to wear you down. And so you have to prepare yourself for that, and you have to work against that. And that's what we want to discuss today, is how do you get mentally healthy, and how do you stay mentally healthy?
Well, again, you're welcome to send me a text or stand up. I have a couple of questions already here, but I want to put before us today. But I'm waiting for your text. Or if you just want to raise your hand, stand up and say it clearly so I can repeat it back so that everybody who watches on the video will be able to know what the question is before they try to address it. Here's a question. Are there regular daily practices that help preserve or create mental wellness?
Yes.
Yes.
Next question. So tell us some of those.
Okay.
Share with us some of those.
There are actually a number of things, and actually put some on the next slide. We created a few slides just so folks can see. There are a couple of things that we think, and we really encourage folks that we're working with to focus on. And, there's the three big ones, we call them the three pillars, but it's, good diet, good exercise, and good sleep. Research has demonstrated over and over and over and over again that those three things, if you are feeding your body, fueling your body with good stuff, your body functions better. And that includes not just your physical, like what we think of as our body, but also our brain. Our brain works better when it has good fuel. Sleep, this is something I acknowledge right off that this is not a strength of mine. Is getting good amounts of sleep. Research suggests between 7 and 9 hours is a good range there, and most of us don't get good sleep, and we all feel that little bit more stress, a little bit more tendency to be cranky or irritable when we don't get enough sleep. Well, that's our brain telling us that we're not getting enough sleep. It's not good for us. We just recently recorded a podcast, actually yesterday morning, that's going to post on Wednesday about the benefits of exercise. And the research just keeps coming out about how powerful of a tool exercise is. And most of us, when we think about exercise, we're thinking about, going to the gym or jogging or, all these different things. But really, it doesn't even have to be that much. A research article that came out not too long ago said that if you go to the gym, even if it's as minimum as twice a week, and just lift a few weights, and it doesn't even say how much the weights have to be. It's just going through that practice and a little bit of weight resistance, not only decreases depressive symptoms, but it prevents depressive episodes. Walking, going for walks, and those kinds of aerobic types of exercise significantly decreases depression and anxiety. And so again, it's not like you have to be a triathlete or anything like that, but just going through the practice of exercising on a somewhat regular basis significantly protects you from mental health conditions.
Yeah, those are the big three. Nutrition, you have to eat well, you have to sleep well, and you have to exercise. But the other thing is, our bodies like rhythms. Sleep is a rhythmic cycle. We go through about 6 cycles per night. We have a day-night cycle. There are seasons, and we cycle through those seasons. Everything about our body and our brains produce 4 very characteristic waveforms. They're very, very consistent waveforms. And so the body likes rhythms. And so the first thing I would recommend to my patients, especially if they have young children, is get those kids on a regular schedule. Why do we hate Mondays so much? Because we get off schedule on the weekend. Okay, and your body starts to go into, it starts to rebel on Monday morning because you've been staying up late, you've been sleeping in, you've been eating too much, you've been drinking too much, typically on a weekend. So by Monday, your body is all out of whack, and it takes till about Wednesday to get yourself back on those rhythms. Then comes another weekend, and you're off rhythm again. So in addition to those 3 pillars, try to get yourself on a good rhythm. If you go to an AA or an NA meeting, what do they talk about? Do that same schedule every day. There's a famous commencement speech by an admiral in the Navy who said, begin each day by making your bed. Then you've accomplished one thing. So get those rhythms, get those patterns, and stay with them day in, day out.
I think the only other thing that I would add is pay attention to your life. There are a lot of things in our life that we are unhappy with, and many of those things can be changed. If you're really unhappy with your job, it's not easy to do, but you could look for and find another job. If you're not happy with a relationship, you can go to therapy or you can do work to help improve that relationship. But so often, I think what happens is that people, again, are experiencing some discomfort or some disappointment in some of those life experiences, and instead of doing something to address those and change those things that we're unhappy about, they'll go to a doctor and ask for medicine to make it to where they're not sad. So basically what we're saying is I don't want to feel sad about this unhappy life I'm living, so make me not feel sad, instead of fixing the problems that we're experiencing. And that many times, if you take those steps to make that change, your whole life can change, and the way that you feel about life can change. I think that's part of why we see this significant increase in diagnoses and treatment for mental health conditions, is because people go and they're unhappy with something in their life. And so physicians are often very happy to give you a diagnosis and prescribe medications. That's what they're there for. That's what they do. And I don't think that an increase in diagnoses necessarily means an increase in prevalence. It's not really that many more people have these diagnoses. One that we talk about a lot of times is autism. I think the percentage is like 1 in 55 kids or something like that is diagnosed with autism now. It's probably not really that prevalent. It's just that we're recognizing it more, and so somebody goes in and a kid is having a hard time with social skills, or they're not communicating very well, and so they're getting a diagnosis. And sometimes we just have to live through life a little bit, make some changes, do some things, get some therapy perhaps, and we can see significant changes in our life for the better.
A follow-up on that. How would you define mental wellness? Would it be different from some people than the next person? What would you say? What would you look like? What would it look like in a person you say is a mentally well or experiencing mental wellness?
That's a good question.
I mean, and I think the sense of it is, does it look the same in everyone?
Sure.
I mean, are some people genetically more predisposed to being happy than others, you know?
Yeah, I think that there certainly is a temperamental issue, right? And those of you who have kids, you know that we're born with our temperament. There's no reason why one child is born so easy and another child is born extremely difficult. We're not that lucky. It's just the way that they come out. So temperament is sort of the way that we start life. And so some people do have sort of a predisposition for being more easygoing or taking, being able to adapt and be more resilient to some of that stuff. But I think that another part of it is how we grow up and how we just see things. You mentioned happiness. I think that one of the things we hear about in our practice a lot is, people will come in and say something along the lines of, well, I deserve to be happy and I'm not happy. I don't know if I know what it means to say that I deserve to be happy. I mean, if I want to feel happy, I have to do something to feel happy. It's like, there's nothing that guarantees that you're going to wake up in the morning and be happy. You have to do something to be happy. And so I think mental wellness, what it looks like in a person is that they are taking active steps to be well, to live the life that they intend and want to live. I think a lot of times we get passive and we sit back and we just expect things to come to us, which is a big issue with the younger generation, I think. But we have to be more active and proactive in our life, and I think that's what good mental wellness looks like.
It's a tricky question because if you truly have if you truly have depression, what we would define as a medical condition, it's going to be pretty hard to feel good. Anybody who's been depressed knows that. But if we're talking about things other than mental illness, Socrates said, know thyself. And we hear, to thine own self be true. And when people come into my practice and they tell me that they just don't feel good, they're not happy, they're not content with their life, so well, what do you really want? And they said, well, I'm not sure. Well, no, you're sure. Somewhere in your body, you know what you really want. You may be afraid to go after it. You may be reluctant to do anything about it. But somewhere deep inside you, you know what's really important to you. And if you're not following that, you're not going to be happy. Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence, he didn't promise us happiness. He promised us the pursuit of happiness. Go out and pursue it, but there's no guarantee that you're going to get it. So you have to know who you are. You have to know your personality. I have a woman now I'm seeing. She is a classic introvert. She doesn't like to talk to people. She's very shy. And she got a job as a salesman. No, she's not going to be happy. Doesn't matter how much money she makes. It's just not who she is. So she has quit her job and is going back to school to do IT, which she can do privately. Okay, that is consistent with who she is. So know who you are, know what's important, and pursue what's important to you.
Okay. Does someone from the audience have anything? Okay. Before I get to this next question, because it goes with parenting and some other things like that, I know you'll want to talk about. One thing, some years ago I came across the work of Martin Seligman, positive psychology. I don't know if you're familiar, I assume you're familiar with the name. And his focus, of course, was on not just focus on what's wrong, but try to find ways to help people move, I think what you're talking about, move toward a sense of mental wellness and happiness. And I remember the acronym PERMA, positive emotions, engagement, in a sense, you're doing something that puts you in the zone, time flies, and you feel like good. Healthy relationships, meaning, having a sense of meaning and purpose in life, and then accomplishment, things you can look back on and feel good about. And I read that, I thought it made a lot of sense because it's almost like you find happiness, not because you're searching after happiness, but it just comes to you along the way of doing other things that are positive in life. Could you address that? How would you, that subject?
Yeah, Martin Seligman did some wonderful work. The first book of his that I read was called Learned Helplessness. And what he did, he started out his work looking at the idea of how we get into circumstances and we start to, when things are negative, we just tend to expect things to be negative and we just kind of give up. And so then he kind of shifted his focus into more positive psychology to say, we keep looking at all these negative things. What about these positive things? What about, looking at life in a more positive, good way? And I agree. I think that so much of our time is spent focusing on negative things, focused on bad things. If you think about, when we were in school, you think about who has the highest achievement in school, who really loves school. It was the valedictorian, the people with the highest GPAs. They're the ones who like, for whatever reason, want to be there every day and just like do everything and do all of their work. The kids with that have achieved the most, they found the most success. Who's least motivated in school? Those students who are not doing well, students who find school really difficult. And so he has a lot of really good points and a lot of good ideas in that as we do more and achieve more, we do find that drive and that motivation and that willingness and interest in doing more things. And I think, again, the more that we do and the more success we find in those things that we do, the more happiness, more satisfaction, the more enjoyment we're going to find in various areas of our life.
One of the primary functions of the human brain is to keep you alive. We're sort of stupid. We do dumb things. We eat the wrong things, we drink the wrong things, we drive too fast, don't sleep enough. But the brain, the second part of our brain, is designed to keep us alive. And it's always alert for anything that might be dangerous. Okay? So it's always monitoring the environment, looking for what might hurt us or looking for what might damage us. So by nature, we tend to think of negative things that could hurt us, things that don't work well, things that are working against us. That's what the brain is doing. That's the program running in the background, is it's always scanning, looking for trouble. It's always thinking about the negative stuff. You have to be aware of that and say, okay, I know what my brain is doing in the background. What I have to do is think about the positive things. I have to make a mental effort. You talk about thinking and being mindful. You have to be mindful to think about the positive things. Your brain's doing its job. It can work in the background. It's always looking for danger. You have to use the top of your brain to look for the good things and start focusing on those.
Here's another question. In reference to Dr. Berney's comment about this younger generation, do you think there are any positive lessons we can learn from the younger generation as they are more focused on mental well-being and getting care for mental health? That's the question. What can we learn from the younger generation? I knew that we were getting older when we start talking about the younger generation, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
I think that something important that we can learn from them is their drive to pursue their interest. If you think about technology, you have the younger generation. You just can't get their phones or their technology out of their hands, and I think that that creates a lot of problems. We could talk about that another time. What it also suggests is it's something that they enjoy, and they are not shy about it. They go after it, and many times as adults, we are much more hesitant to engage in activities that we enjoy. We don't take vacations. We don't go out and do the things that we really like doing, and so it's all work for us. Maybe they're sort of imbalanced in the direction of more enjoyment and fun and leisure time, but we certainly could take a lesson from some of that and pull some of that into our life and spend more time, doing things that bring us some happiness and some joy and some relaxation.
It could be said we as the older generation have not done a great job of creating a world where mental health and well-being is actually all that great. So, maybe we do need to learn some more from them.
We talk about younger generation. I talk about younger generations.
Right, I got it.
More than one is younger. Berney and I started our private practice in 2014. How many hours a week did we work when we used to? 80 hours a week. We're workaholics, okay? I grew up I'm a baby boomer. an old baby boomer. And I grew up at a time when there weren't a lot of resources, and you had to work, and you had to work hard. There was just no question about it. What I'm learning from these younger generations is something called work-life balance, which I don't have, but they're teaching me that it's okay to work hard, but you also have to play hard. They don't worry about work and having a job the way I worried about having it. I was afraid to lose my job. The younger generation doesn't care. They don't care. They'll just go out and get another one, okay? So they are much better at maintaining a healthy balance between their personal life and their work life. And that's one of the lessons I'm learning from them.
They're also very willing to advocate for, if they feel like they have something wrong with them, they will say that they have something wrong with them. We have, and they'll research it. We have youth, young adults and teenagers who come into our practice all the time, having already diagnosed themselves. Again, that's another problem that we could talk about another time. But they come in with all the evidence for why they have said diagnosis, even if it's one of the most rare conditions ever. But they are absolutely sure that they have it, and they can give you all the evidence and support to why. But they are very in tune with themselves and look to identify what's wrong, and they don't have any hesitation to say, I have this wrong with me, how do I fix it? And I think that that's an important thing that they do too.
You had a question?
Go ahead, Dave. The question for those who may watch this on video from the congregation is, it's about point number 4. How do you meditate? Are there any tips on meditation and how that can become effective for a person's life?
There's a great book. It's called Getting to Calm. We live in a pretty frantic world, and so our brains are constantly spinning, trying to figure things out. And you have to push your brain to calm, and one of the ways to do that is with meditation. And I'm not a good meditator. I can't sit still for 15 minutes and meditate. I can absolutely assure you, I will be biting my arms if I have to sit still for 15 minutes. Generally, we're told 15 minutes a day. You can also meditate for 1 minute 15 times a day. You don't have to do it all at one time. I cannot meditate for more than a couple of minutes. I've tried. But I can stay calm for about a minute. And that, if I do that several times a day, it's sufficient. The other thing is that meditation is meditation is like exercise. I was training for a triathlon 80 or 90 years ago, and I didn't like to swim. I didn't like the swimming part. I can swim. I've never been a good swimmer, and I just didn't like doing it. It took a lot of time, and it was cold, and I just didn't like it. That's not for me. I don't mind running. Did a lot of it. That's what worked for me. Other people like to go to the gym. Meditation is the same. You have to find what works for you, whatever that is, and for however long you can do it. I would try to make that a rhythmic. Remember we talked about the rhythms of your life. I would try to do it about the same time every day. It doesn't matter as long as you're doing it for some time every day. People tell me they use apps, but they stop working. They work for a while and then they stop working. So go ahead and change. I had a woman who went through a divorce. She'd been married for almost 40 years, had a real difficult time. And I knew she was Catholic, and I said, do you ever say the rosary? And she said, oh, yes, all the time. I said, there's your meditation. For her, it was prayer. For other people, it's music. For other people, it's exercise. Whatever works for you, whatever gets your brain back to calm, do that a few times a day. That's all you need.
And really, that's, when you think about what meditation is, what we're really talking about is focusing on something specific that's other than something that's causing you a lot of stress. And so whether it's the rosary or it's some gentle music or whatever it might be, I had a fellow that I worked with for a while, and he started out, he really wanted to be able to meditate, and he started out where he listened to guided meditations. For folks who have a hard time with it, guided meditations are a great way to start because there's actually words and people are telling you what to do, and I find that much easier when they're telling you, relax. Oh, remember, you're still supposed to be relaxing. You need those reminders. But so he started out using those for 5 minutes, And the last time I saw him, he would spend 45 minutes of his lunch break meditating. I'm like, wow, dude, that is crazy. How do you do that? And so I had him trying to tell me how to do it, and I still couldn't do it either. But you just build it up. Like you said, exercise is sort of the same thing as as you keep building the skill, you'll be able to do it more. But it's got to be personal, whatever you can focus on, whatever you can do to just kind of get your mind focused on something other than what's causing you some stress and problems. That should be helpful.
I've done a lot of work with questions about children and parenting, and I want to just kind of conclude with this for the sake of time. This kind of two-part question. What are some of the best parenting practices for raising children with mental health and self-awareness? Can you address how to do this with a child who's hesitant to talk about emotions?
I think that one of the most difficult things parents parents encounter when they have kids is that they have a kid. And what I mean by that was supposed to be a little bit of a joke, but it's okay. You guys are real serious right now. It's okay. But the challenge is that each kid is so different. You know, you have one child, and then a couple of years later you have another child, and that child is so different than the first child. And what we really advocate a lot to folks is to make sure that you're parenting the child that you have, not the child that you thought you had or that you wanted. Each child comes with its own particular set of challenges and joys. But there are those challenges, and you know, we don't want to go into parenting thinking that everything is going to be great, because again, those of us who have kids know that everything is not always great. When you have that child that has some of those needs, whether it's physical needs or emotional needs, again, the really important thing to start with is to focus on recognizing that your child has some things going on, and that, you know, that comes with work. We have to listen, and we have to be patient, and we have to be caring, and we have to, you know, create boundaries, because just because your child has ADHD doesn't mean that running around all the time is okay. It's what their body wants them to do, but you still have to set limits, and you still have to have boundaries and rules and expectations and those kinds of things. So we have to make sure that we raise the kids that we have and parent those children instead of the kids that we sort of idealize and then try to do everything the same exact way with every child.
Yeah, again, I think severity, the extent of the condition is also very important. If it's a mild form of ADHD, for example, that requires one set of skills. If it's a more complex problem like bipolar disorder and a child is having emotional meltdowns and destroying property and attacking people, that requires another whole set of interventions. So I think it has to be directed at a particular child at a particular level of severity.
I think the question also asks something about
what
if the child doesn't want to talk about feelings.
Yes, the child is reluctant to talk about it. Do it.
Most of the time, not always, most of the time, kids are not going to talk to their parents about their emotions and feelings. They might early on in life, and then there comes a time when the parent will come in and say, he just doesn't talk to me anymore, or she just won't tell me anything anymore, she stays in her room all the time, or he just, you know, he shuns us, he stays away from us. And that happens, and I think that those are times when it's really important to, you know, to look for a therapist or somebody for the child to talk to. And when I say therapist, I mean that very loosely. It could be a teacher that the child really connects with, that the child will talk to and communicate with. It could be someone else at school. It could be a therapist. But it's got to be someone that the child connects with and will talk to, and the child knows that they can be open with that person and not risk, you know, that person going back and telling mom and dad everything that they just told. You know, that's one of the benefits I think that we have, is that we keep everything confidential, and we say that with the child and the parent in the room at the same time, and we say, you know, anything we talk about in here is between me and you. I don't tell anybody anything. You can walk out the door and tell mom everything that we talked about if you want to, but I'm not going to. What we talk about is between us, and you have that confidence. And sometimes it takes a few sessions, but kids really latch onto that, and they start sharing things that are really critical to their well-being.
Keep in mind, too, that young children, prior to age 11 or 12, they don't have the vocabulary to talk about their feelings. They just don't have the words to explain how they're feeling. Teenagers have the words, but not the desire. They're not going to share with you. They're going to share with their friends. They're going to share with other people. They're not likely to share with you. The other thing is, if they share, you can't do anything about that immediately. What parents want to do is they want their kids to tell them, and then they want to intervene. They want to lecture. They want to teach. They want to change. No, step back. Just let your children talk. Don't try to intervene.
Will you scroll that back to the about the mental about the how to follow Dr. Berney and Dr. Marshall? Okay, right here, of course, the mental breakdown. I encourage you to check that out. But I would like for our congregation to, we're going to plan this out a little bit into the future, is to read your book, Handbook for Raising an Emotionally Healthy Child, and maybe having a group discussion, maybe having you both back sometime to talk about that, because I think it'd be a worthwhile book for us to read. Even if you don't have children in your home, you may have grandchildren or whatever, you might want to refer it. But this is an important conversation. We live in a challenging world for adults. We live in a particularly challenging world for young people, and adults knowing how to kind of give guidance or to seek out other helpful resources for their children to be referred to. So this topic requires much longer time than we have this morning to devote to it, and we'll do that as a congregation. But I just want to say thank you for being here. And as a church, we're going to keep having these conversations, not in this format necessarily, but updates from time to time going forward each month where we talk about some of these issues about mental health awareness. And so that Beacon Hill Fellowship and each one of us can be advocates for probably mental well-being, but also for if we need to intervene with someone who's close to us or a family member who may be having a serious issue, that we'll know what to do and how to approach that. And that requires, I think, a lot of thought and maybe even some practicing scenarios in your own mind and brain about how that might come up and how to deal with it. All right, thank you again for being here. We appreciate very much your being 2 weeks in a row. Thank you, Dr. Marshall. Thank you, Dr. Berney. We appreciate it very much.
Has done. You may be seated. Thank you.
Again, thank you for your participation. And this last 2 weeks have been a little different format for us, but a good one where we could engage not only your questions, but also to hear from two wonderful people who've come to share out of their life experience and professional experience. And so I hope that at the close of this month that you will have heard the message plain and clear that we think mental wellness is important. That should be obvious, but also if you're struggling with something that needs, where you need professional care and help and therapy, or group therapy, or whatever it may be, that you don't be afraid to admit it and ask and seek out help. We want that to always be true of our community, that we are that way. And we'll work at that as we go further into the future. Let me go over a few things by way of announcement. Here's one thing particular. Next Sunday, June the 2nd, we'll have a special guest, Terry Boucher, who will be, she's a Peace board member, and she's going to be here briefly to share. She'll have a little bit of time during the service, but also after the service, she's going to speak about justice and mercy to the discipleship team in the fellowship hall. All the congregation is invited to attend that as well. But light snacks will be provided. And next, well, we'll go to the giving. Thank you for what you do give, and that's how you can give if you're not physically present here, or if you are physically present here and you want to give that way, you can do that too. We'll accept your gifts regardless of how you give them. But we do have people who give online, who watch us online, both near and far, and they give us, make contributions to our congregation, and we're very appreciative of that. And thank you for what you give. I'll ask those who are going to help me with receiving the offering. Terry's not here, so I think Jennifer's going to come down and help Bill. Let's have a prayer before we receive the offering. Gracious God, thank you for this day and for the time we've had to share and reflect upon a variety of subjects. This week, of course, is not only Memorial Day weekend, but also the kind of closing service of our emphases on mental health awareness. We know that many people across the Christian world are celebrating this as Trinity Sunday. A lot of different things going on. But today we pause to thank you for the wonderful things that we have in life, the everyday blessings that we enjoy, and as we take a portion of what we have received from life in this world and return it to you through this church, I pray the Beacon Hill Fellowship would always use the resources given to create loving community, not only within our congregation, but go out from the congregation, try to build it into our lives in general, so that we might be positive contributors to a better world so that one day we'll look back and see how that we've made a difference. Help us to do those things and continue to do those things individually and corporately as a community of faith. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen. If you notice the announcements that we scroll through, a couple of things, just our program notes. We'll scroll back there, if you will, to the Pride activities coming up. We'll kind of shift in our emphases as a congregation. During Polk Pride Week, we'll host, once again, the Pride and Faith service here on Thursday night, June the 13th at 7 p.m. Well, here it is up on the screen. And we also, Pride in the Park, we'll have a booth at Pride in the Park as we normally do. So you're going to be seeing the next couple of weeks a sign-up sheet for those who can help us with our booth. We'll need some people to help us set up and take down, but also to man the booth during the day. And that will be during Pride in the Park on Saturday. But the big feature here is Pride and Faith service on that Thursday night. It's a part of the Polk Pride programming. So we've been on this for years now. And so that's a big service for our church. Last year we had 114 people, I think, here. And that requires some additional work and help, and I appreciate everybody's going to help us pull that off. But thank you very much. And notice the Pride in Faith joint choir. In times past, this whole stage has been full of people singing together from different congregations. I'd like to see some people from the Beacon Hill Fellowship come and sing. You say, I'm not a singer. Well, it's a choir. You can Milli Vanilli it. You know, Milli Vanilli, you can lip sync, okay? Just pretend to sing. But preferably, if you would sing, it would be great right up here on this stage. But the next practice is Saturday, June the 8th at 6 p.m. right in this spot. And then there'll be a final practice right before the service begins just to go over everything. But all the practices are here, and I hope you'll participate. Notice also Lunch and Learn this month will be on June the 12th. Dustin Shea doesn't say what he does, but I'll tell you what he does. He is a part of the Polk Pride board. He's a board member, and he works to help pull all this out. He's going to come and talk to us about his role with Polk Pride and what they're trying to accomplish, and our role in that as a congregation. So Dustin Shea will be here speaking on that. Then we're going to take a 1-month break on Lunch and Learns for July, and you'll start seeing a second part of the year emphasis from August to the end of the year. But hope you can come and bring a friend for those activities. All right, please stand. Thank you so much for being a part of the service. And don't forget to thank Dr. Berney and Dr. Marshall for coming again 2 weeks in a row. We appreciate their willingness to be here and for what they shared with us and for your participation in it as well. As we conclude our service, we're going to sing our way out of the building with our song. I think we've been singing "Oh for a World." Yep.